We're with Mike Davidson on his property. Mike, what a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's great to see you. You honked your horn, and a bunch of visitors came.
Yes,
You've
sir.
got them well trained.
Well, they're used to coming to feed.
So you run cattle, and how many head of livestock do you have?
I've got a little over 100 head.
How big's your property?
About 8 sections, 640 acres in a section.
You know, that's a huge ranch in other places, but in Texas, that's sort of, it's not even big in Texas.
That's correct. I used to manage a ranch that was a lot larger than that for about 30 years, and so I have a love for the land, and I was able to start acquiring some property on my own.
Were you born out here?
Yes, sir, here in Big Spring, about 1964.
And was your family from here originally? When did you guys come to Texas?
Yes, my family was from Big Spring, so we've been around a long time.
Well, now we've been talking to some folks around here who say that, ranching, it wasn't the most economically rewarding industry, and they have to look to other things to make a go of it. And that's sort of your story too, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, I managed that ranch, and obviously that type of work doesn't pay very well, and so I had to enhance my income to raise a family, and oil and gas was available and has been very good to us.
Now, over there we saw the cows and the horse that came to visit when you honked your horn. I thought that was amazing. But now behind us is, why don't you describe what we see there? I think I know what it is, but why don't you tell me to make sure I'm getting it right?
Well, that's in this area they call it a wolfberry well. It's been drilled to about 10,000 foot, and they were probably fracked 8 to 10 different zones in there, and to open up the rock and able to produce more oil. For years, this country had been drilled, and a lot of people had thought, well, there's no more to be got out of here, and what's here is all we'll get. And once fracking came along, we were able to, with that new technology, to drill a tremendous amount of wells in this area, which has had a huge impact on our economy and people's lives, and it's been a wonderful thing.
So, things were very strong in conventional oil and gas, I guess going back almost a century or maybe even more, and then it started to decline, and it seems to me that this part of Texas declined a little bit too. I was hearing that Midland, I'm not going to say it was dilapidated, but it didn't shout opportunity. Has it been really in the last 5-10 years that fracking lit a fire under things again?
Yes, I know it had been tried by some larger companies in certain areas, but it had been really revolutionized and changed to a point that more people understood it.
So the oil comes up and it goes in those tanks there, and there's not a pipe. A truck comes and empties those, once a week, once a month kind of thing?
That's correct.
And now you're still obviously ranching around here.
Yes, sir.
You're from here, your family's from here. It's too obvious to say it, but sometimes obvious things need to be said. You obviously care about the land. You don't want to harm your cattle. You don't want to harm your home or your family. Critics of fracking say it devastates the environment, and anyone who would approve it is tricked or hoodwinked by oil and gas companies. What would you say to that?
Well, look around. That well was fracked right there. I see zero impact other than just a little footprint of some tanks and a pump jack, which were here before fracking. And so the impact is minimal. They come in and they take care of what they need to do, and when they pull out, they clean up, and everything is back with grass growing, and that's where the pits were, right there. You can't even tell they were there. So they take care of business, and they do it right. It's to their benefit and everyone around.
I sensed that until about 10 years ago, young people wouldn't stick around Midland. It was just a little tough to make a go of it. But now it's a real magnet. There's a lot of jobs. Tell me about your family. Do you think your family will stay in this area? Do you think because of fracking, not only the revenues that'll come to you from having the oil, but just the jobs to work on everyone else? Is that going to make a difference for your family?
Absolutely. It not only does it create jobs in the fracking industry, but so many other supporting industries around, like you mentioned earlier, welders and roustabout crews and fencers, and it just is it has a tremendous impact for many facets.
I'd say we could be in a Welcome to Texas tourism video right now. Look at that little calf there. Tell me about that guy.
Well, he's new. That's the first time I've seen him myself. Mama just brought him up, but that's always a pleasure to see.
Isn't that great? Well, so obviously they don't mind. They don't mind the fracking one bit.
Not at all. They've been here through the whole process, and you can tell that they're doing very well.
Isn't that great? That's just a little slice of Texas right there. Now, I saw there was another rig of some sort around here. Tell me a little bit about how much action you have. And you say you went down to 10,000 feet. That's where the sweet spot is, I get the depth. And then you go out. So it's down at 10,000 feet and then out. How far out would those laterals, those horizontal wells go?
Actually, these wells here were drilled vertically to about 10,000. And then there's zones stretching from 7,000 down to about 10. And that's where they would perforate and frack each one of those zones. They haven't drilled any horizontals, which is what you're talking about there.
So there's enough oil, so there's enough shale that they can just go straight down and get all they need.
Absolutely, and they're starting to do some horizontals south and just across to my neighbors on the Guitar Ranch over here, and having tremendous success. Actually, opening up more of a certain zone that produces tremendously. So. But this right here was not a horizontal well.
God, isn't that interesting? All right, I'm learning. I mean, I spent some time in Marcellus shale in Pennsylvania. I can't even think of Pennsylvania as an oil and gas state. It's weird to think of it, but it certainly transformed that place. Here it's a little different because here everyone sort of grew up knowing oil and gas was there. But was there a feeling that those best days were done? Was there a feeling that was sort of over?
Yes, and like I said, they thought they'd discovered the majority of what was here. Might come in and do some infill drilling and catch some others, but it really kind of started subsiding and very little interest in this area until fracking come along.
Got one more question for you. I mean, we're talking about you as the landowner, someone who's been in this area for generations and hopes generations to come. I'm just getting such a kick out of these guys and gals. There's a fella. I'm rural enough to understand that's a fella over there. Don't try and milk that one. That's not a cow. But let's talk big picture a little bit, because the United States imports millions of barrels of oil every day. Some from Canada, and we love it to sell it to you, but some of it from very hostile places: Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Venezuela. I mean, Nigeria, I suppose, is not an enemy. It's just a corrupt place. But Venezuela, hostile. Saudi Arabia, hostile. Do you ever think about the national interest? Does that motivate you? Is there a sense of patriotism, or is that just for politicians in Washington to talk about? I mean, do you see what you're doing as nation building?
Absolutely. I think it's important that we take care of the resources we have and the people that are here, and support that rather than supporting countries that are not our allies, basically. And so that's important.
I just want to ask you one more question, because we're talking about friends and enemies and allies. Up in Canada, we have the oil sands, completely different technology, but there's a lot of oil up there. And there's a Canadian proposal to build a pipeline called the Keystone XL, would link up to the American Keystone and bring that Canadian, I call it ethical oil, all the way down to Texas, displace some of that Venezuelan crude. Is that something, do Americans know about Keystone XL? Has it started to percolate?
Yeah, there's a lot of publicity about that, obviously, and with Obama's not allowing it to happen, and there's a lot of friction there. And y'all are good now.
How do you explain it? How do you explain it? I mean, we're like you say, we're best friends, we're best allies, we're so similar. I mean, I'm trying my best to be Texan today, but even when I'm up in Canada, I mean, we're so similar.
Yes, sir.
And I just don't get preferring foreign conflict oil to Canadian ethical oil. What do you think the reason is? What's the holdup?
I wish I could put my finger on it. I have no control over that, but I wish I had a better answer.
I
really don't know.
I don't think anyone has an answer. I don't think anyone has an answer. I find it so confusing. It makes no sense economically, no sense strategically. Well, listen, I've enjoyed our conversation, and we've had a bit of a studio audience today.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And they're very attentive, extremely attentive, more attentive than my normal studio audiences might be. And, they're chewing things over, so to speak.
Absolutely.
This is a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for showing us around your place here.
You too, sir. Thank you so much.
Good luck. All the best. Cheers.